right now. Okay. Welcome everybody to Melissa's Monday Madness. It is Monday, July 2nd, the day after Canada Day for all of us Canadians. 2 days before all of you Americans get, is it Independence Day?
Yes. Independence
Day. July 4th, Independence Day, whatever you want to call it, is in 2 days. So, you know, happy Independence Day for all of you, especially you, Amy, because I know you're in the States.
Yeah.
I do love the States, so lots of pride and joy there. So today my guest is Amy. We're not going to go, I know it says Amy Plumb everywhere, Amy Michelle on Facebook, Amy Plumb in real life. We're just going to roll with it. Amy is joining us. She is a psychotherapist as well as a life coach. So we're going to get into that. How about you introduce yourself and then we will start talking.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. My name is Amy Plumb in real life and Amy Michelle online. I live and work in the Seattle, Washington area. So I have a private practice here in North Seattle, and I've been doing that for 3 years. I have a long history of working in community mental health with lots of different problems and people. So, and then about a year ago, I got interested in life coaching because I really like working with people who are ready to take action. So I was like, wow, this is going to be great where I can like kind of work with somebody from, I don't want to say the bottom up, but that's a good descriptor, from like the bottom all the way up. And so got into life coach training with IPAC back in September of last year. And I'm just finishing that up right now and taking on my first life coaching clients. So it's going to be a great, I think, complement to some of the work that I'm already doing. And I'm super excited about it.
Absolutely. I'm going to go right into controversial because that's, I know you love that. I've listened to some of your videos myself. Yeah. I do follow Amy and her and I kind of vibe that way. We're controversial and it doesn't bother us. So quick question.
Yeah.
Now, being a coach, I'm a mindset coach. You're a life coach. Same thing, different style. Do you find that there are limitations to psychotherapy versus coaching?
Oh yeah, very much so. We're completely, our hands are tied in terms of like laws and regulations and insurance, and it's just a nightmare. It's very, very draining. And I think that's why, you know, a lot of folks who are psychotherapists or psychologists are making the shift over into life coaching or some form of coaching, is because there's a lot more freedom. And there's actually a piece in my psychotherapy disclosure statement that states that I approach a lot of my work as a peer, and that my therapy clients need to let me know if they're uncomfortable with that. And the reason for that is because I think, you know, peer work, as opposed to me sitting here as like the expert, there's something really, really powerful about being able to connect with somebody like on a peer level and Absolutely. To be able to self-disclose and stuff like that, which is not something we're allowed to do in psychotherapy and psychology so much. I know people do it, I do it, but it's kind of frowned on. Mm-hmm.
In some of the speaking that I've been doing lately, and with some of my own clients and friends even, I've had discussions with them where they've seen therapists and they've seen counselors and they've seen, you know, different people, and then they get talking to me for an hour and they're like, wow, like, you know, they can help me, but they're not helping me, right? Like they're not getting down to that. And I wonder, a lot of people, I got flack. I went on Reddit and I did an AMA Ask Me Anything, and I got attacked for saying that I was a mindset coach. Like it was just huge drama, right? And there was thousands of comments and they're like, what makes you qualified? And I said, life makes me qualified. I don't need certification. One of the things that I did say, and I've said this before, and I will continue saying it again, therapy was invented. It was brought forth by somebody. It wasn't just this magical book that appeared, right? People like you and I who are trendsetters, who are revolutionary visionaries, who get down to the bottom of this, are the people who really brought forth what therapy is today, right? Different added variations of it, right? And people come in and say, well, this isn't working, so try this. And, you know, Freud comes in and talks about your ego, and lots of different scenarios. And I think people aren't really understanding that. And I think that makes them a little bit more leery to come to us as coaches rather than to you as a psychotherapist.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I also think that the pushback from, and the only reason I say this is because I've experienced, so I'm a licensed mental health counselor who's also duly credentialed in substance use and addictions. And I get to see how both of these two worlds fight each other when one or the other is threatened. And so I think that that is what actually is happening in the world of like licensed and educated and whatever, with the coaching stuff. I think a lot of people, when they start attacking others, are doing it from a place of like fear and threat, and you're going to take my job and you're going to take my client and all that other kind of stuff. And Absolutely. I see all the time, especially in the state of Washington right now, there's a big battle between the chemical dependency counselors and the licensed mental health counselors, because we're pushing in this state to grandfather in people who have master's degrees but who did not go to chemical dependency training school or whatever. And so the substance use counselors are really pushing back on that, because there are a lot of folks who don't have any like mental health training. And if you get to somebody who has a master's degree but also is a CDP, a lot of people are more likely to go, you'll get higher wages, and it's going to push out those people. So I think a lot of that between even I've had my own colleagues in the therapy world are like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You know? And I'm like, I'm having a lot of fucking fun. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're off your fucking rocker, right? You know, me personally, I have mad respect for psychotherapists, counselors, anything. You know what I mean? Because you did the work. You went through there. If I have a client come to me and say, you know, well, I want to go see a therapist, absolutely, if that's what you feel like you want to do. I'm not one of those stupid people. And pardon me if anybody watching is, but if I know that one of my mindset clients is so deep in depression and so deep, I want to catch them before they get there, or mild depression, and say, okay, let's find the root cause and change it, right? But if I've got somebody who's into addictions, who is so heavily far gone that they need medical professionals, I'm going to send them there. I will do the research myself and find somebody who's qualified and local to help my clients, because I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I can help Buzz, Tom, and Jerry. You know, I'm going to be like, no, I'm not qualified to do that. I don't have that experience, right? And I think a lot of people miss that respect, that there is a lot of time and effort that you've put in to getting those qualifications, right? I think it all comes down to what people need. Sometimes they're going to need therapy. Sometimes they're going to need coaching, right?
Sure.
And a lot of the time, even as coaches, you can mix the two, right?
Sure.
Arturia says a lot of time the coaches are more open-minded. And I'm assuming she means coaches. I would agree in some respect. I think once you have, and here's a question for you, is once you have that kind of training, do you find that a lot of people who are trained in therapy and psychology have more of a closed mindset as they go forward because they've been trained?
Yeah, I think it's more of a mindset of like, I'm an expert on your life because I went to graduate school. And I've seen that, like when I was working in community mental health, I facilitated a women's group, and there were so many times, and I did that for 5 years. And there were so many times where, you know, it would have been so beneficial to the client if I could have said, man, you know what? Hey, I've been through a similar situation and here's how I got through it. But we had a no self-disclosure policy at that clinic. And I distinctly remember our consulting psychologist saying, like, you don't disclose anything, and clients don't care about you. They don't care about your story. And that's just not my lived experience. And so I think there's this, it's like, well, it's so crazy because we'll go to these conventions, right? And we're all like sitting around like, I'm a psychologist. And then afterwards, we're just like totally different people. Like, we're only closed-minded because we're boxed in. And I think we're just like there's so many laws and restrictions, and I respect the laws and restrictions, and they're there for a reason. And a lot of times it's taken too far. And I can't tell you how many times I got in trouble at work for just like, no, I'm not doing that. Or here's what I'm doing instead. And this is actually to benefit this person. I had freaking groupies who would follow me around from all of the groups that I would do, because I was like, me too. I was like, one of us had to go to grad school, you guys. I took one for the team, you know? And that's how I approached my work. It's like, I was just as messed up as you like 10 years ago. We can't say that in therapy. You know, it's just, you can't do that.
And I think that's one of the huge values of coaches. I can sit across from my clients and say, okay, I to this day, I'm still addicted to cocaine. Have I touched it in 15 years? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But I'm still addicted to it. You know, I was a prostitute. You can't just sit there and say, okay, I was all of these things and not have that connection with somebody, right? Like if somebody came to you and they're like, you don't understand, and they've got this huge, you know, you get clients who come to you and say, you don't know, you didn't live my life. You've got a graduate degree. Why would you have any idea what I went through, right? You can't sit there and go, yeah, but I did, right? Like I did. I made it through and I changed, right? And give them that encouragement that they can too.
For sure. And on my last day of work in community mental health, I sat in that women's group and I was like, fuck it, I'm telling you guys everything. I was just like, and just like, I'll never forget that hour and a half, because those women were just like, holy crap. Because I've done sex work, I've done drugs, I've sold drugs, like I've ran the gamut of all that stuff. And for me to sit across from them for 5 years and act like my shit didn't stink. I mean, I didn't, but to not be able to say, hey man, like you can do this too. And I told them at the end, I was like, the only reason that I'm sharing this with you, any of you, is to let you know that I'm no different than you and you can do anything that I've done.
Absolutely.
There's so much freaking value in that. And I can't have that on my psychotherapy website. On my psychotherapy website, I'm like, I'm from the Midwest. I enjoy reading, like, which is true, but
mild version of who you truly are.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of restrictions, and it's demotivating, and it doesn't serve many people who could really benefit from just a like, yeah, I get that, man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't go dance in the moonlight and say you're a woo spiritual chick if you're a psychotherapist, right? You can't say, oh, I believe in this. No. And I think people need that. And I think that's why the coaching industry is booming and really growing right now, is because people like us are standing up and saying, here I am. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm here, right? I recently launched the 7 mindset pillars, right? And you were talking about this not that long ago with the high profile suicides, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch base with you, and I waited until this interview because I didn't want to do it over text, because then, you know, it's a little bit more awkward. But my ideal clients are people who are successful. They're people who are in high profile lives, right? Whose shit doesn't stink, but who are terribly unhappy. Right? They sit there, they're unhappy. They've got, you know, the hair done. The men are all, you know, macho men, and they go golfing every Saturday or what have you, right? And they've got these perfect idealistic lives, but they're dying from unhappiness. And I find there's emotional shaming that's going on, situational shaming. So situational would be, well, why are you unhappy? You've got the perfect life. Fuck you. You're not being cheated on. Like, give me a break, right?
Yeah.
And so they hide it, right? They hide all of this bullshit that's going on in their life, even if it's, you know, a positive experience in their childhood that causes them to have, you know, oh, I'm going to be like my mother, amazing role model. I'm going to be just like my mother. Grow up, you're exactly like your mother, but it's not for you, and you're dying of unhappiness, right? But you have to keep up appearances. So then when you're that unhappy and you can't share it, like being a psychotherapist, right? You can't share that with the world. You have to keep up appearances. You sit there, that's when you turn to sex. That's when you turn to drugs. That's when you turn to alcohol. That's when anxiety and depression come into play, right? Non-medical, because I agree there's a difference between medical and non-medical depression. But even the non-medical depression, if it lasts too long, like if you're in that state of unhappiness for so long, that's going to turn into medical depression and even suicide.
Yeah.
Right? Because people can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's who my ideal clients are. Right. And I know that I had broached this a little bit to you. And like I said, I wanted to kind of one-on-one talk to you about it, because I'm not going to deal with, if my client comes to me and says, Melissa, I'm depressed, I need your help. You know, I've got the perfect life, I'm depressed, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say one of these high profile people who committed suicide. Well, I'm going to say, okay, well, let's find out why, right? Let's go in, let's have a couple sessions. Let's try to figure out what's going on. And if I can't help you, I'm going to promise you, I'm going to find you somebody who can, right? It's, I don't know. It pisses me off when people don't think that, you know, people like us or anybody in seven-figure coaches or, you know, musicians, actors who, oh, you've got the perfect life, right? You're making millions of dollars. Your life is great compared to mine. Blow me. Blow me, because it ain't happening, right? Everybody's going to be unhappy at one point or another.
Sure. Absolutely. Yep. I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I guess it is kind of this, you know, the same thing, and thinking about like the shame and stigma around talking about that stuff. And I would think, you know, with all of these high profile suicides and with the bullying movement, I really think like the bullying movement and like school shootings kind of kicked off the discussion about mental health stuff. But I think oftentimes we get sidetracked and talking about guns, and we're not actually like really talking about like what we can talk about, you know, just in society without being shamed and stuff like that. So I wish more people would do it. I mean, how long did it take Mariah Carey to frickin' come out with her bipolar disorder? You know, I mean, geez Louise. Yeah. It's bizarre. And the more people that can talk, but we're also still like, you know, like I like that analogy you made between like psychotherapists have to keep their mouth shut, as do celebrities. There's a lot on the line, you know.
Well, that's why those are my ideal clients, right? Literally psychotherapists, doctors, lawyers, dentists. If you actually look at studies on the highest number of suicides, they're men, first of all, right? Men, because they're told they can't cry, they need to suck shit up. And high profile individuals, because they've got this reputation that they need to build up, right? Oh, I'm a highly successful neurosurgeon, but I hate my freaking life. My wife's bullied or whatever, right? Like, you got all this shit going on and you can't talk about it.
Right.
It's crap. It's absolute crap.
I concur. Yeah.
Okay.
I wish we could talk about it.
It is a huge topic, and I think not enough people are talking about it. And then people get into their minds that it's one way or the other. Right?
Yeah.
Depression has to be this. Mental illness has to be this, right? And I know that you've worked with that for a long time. And it's nice to hear from somebody else who's worked with it and who's taken that and who agrees. Like it's not what it used to be. At least we're not putting them all in mental institutions anymore.
Thank goodness. No. I tell my folks, I actually just talked to somebody today when I was doing a consultation, because a lot of people think that if you talk about suicide, you're going to get committed. And a lot of therapists do that. They're like, oh no, like that's a CYA issue. So I make sure to tell everybody, like, if you're cutting on yourself, if you're engaged in any type of self-inflicted violence or self-harm, if you're feeling suicidal, I don't actually have to report that. A lot of therapists will, because they're freaking afraid. But the only time I have to make that report, and I tell people that when I first meet them, because I want them to feel comfortable to come in and talk about whatever is happening in their life in this moment, without the fear of getting freaking committed for a 72-hour hold in some psych hospital somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and people are like, oh, really? I thought, and I'm like, no, that's just a freaking CYA thing. You know, it has to be imminent in that case. So yeah, I don't think a lot of people feel comfortable even talking to their therapist. I mean, I've had people that I've worked with for years who like after years are like, oh, and by the way, I'm like, really? Really? They're like, yeah, I didn't want to talk about it before. I'm like, oh man, okay. That's a hardcore doorknob. It's a term I use when my clients drop the bomb on me as their hands on the doorknob on their way out. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, we need to talk about this.
Okay, bye.
Do you find that, and this is another thing that I've already said, I've always said with suicide, and I'm not going to lie, I was totally against suicide. I was angry. I had a friend, an acquaintance do it a couple years ago, and I was pissed. Yeah. I was like, you're a fucking coward. Like, I hate you right now. And I was angry. And this is before I started coaching and before I, really opened myself up to my own spiritualness. And I'm at the point where it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do. If you are thinking that you're going to commit suicide, nothing anybody says or does is going to change your mind. If you've got your mindset that you're going to commit suicide, you're probably going to do it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's completely up to that person to decide not to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like my dad actually just sent me a video, which I hadn't seen before, by it was a guy, one of the 19 survivors of the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, he had jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and was one of the 19 survivors in the history of people jumping off that bridge. And it was just a brief interview with this guy. And he was like, every one of us will tell you, like, the moment our hands, like, got, pushed off that railing, it was an immediate, just like, why are we doing this? And so I think that, like, and I can't, like, I've never been that depressed. And like, this is this weird statement where like I can't, like, even sitting across from somebody, like, I've never been so depressed where that was even an option for me. But for me to sit across from somebody and see what that looks like just the amount of pain that somebody is in when that is a viable option, like I wish I could experience it, because I just, not literally, but because it's not even something like that I can even wrap my mind around. Like, I intellectually know it, but just to have somebody who's in that much pain. And I've had a relative who suicided a couple of years ago. And, none of us, well, I wasn't really close to her, but, from all appearances, just on the outside, just looked happy and had a beautiful family. And
that was the girl that I knew too. Beautiful 13-year-old child. Like, man, I think for me, I've come to terms with it. Like I said, I was really angry, and to go from somebody who knew somebody who did that to understanding that, it's not my choice. And I think me telling other people, if you're thinking about committing suicide, if you've got that thought in your head and that is your only option, nothing anybody says is going to change that, right? You can inspire somebody to make a different choice. Yeah, okay. But it's not going to come from you. It's basically you saying, okay, what do you think, right? And getting the other person to make that decision, because it's a lot of family and a lot of friends who are in that position and seeing somebody else commit suicide, they blame themselves. Well, what if I had done more? What if I had said something? What if, all the what ifs? What if doesn't matter? Because nothing, 99% of the time or 90% of the time, one, they're not going to talk about it. They're just going to do it. And two, you wouldn't have known, right? Because they're not going to say anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I don't know that anybody, and I can't say this, my scope is so limited in terms of, I certainly work with a lot of people who have suicidal and who've had many attempts, for sure. It's just this, and I agree. I don't think there's anything that I can say, as a clinician. And I think a lot of times, like, and we do this anyway with people who are like sad. We're like, oh God, I'm feeling uncomfortable because you're sad, and that's evoking sadness in me, and I don't want to experience that right now. So we try to like, you know, oh, it'll be okay, or don't do that, or you don't really want to do that. I went to go see Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., whose father wrote the Four Agreements, speak on Friday. And
I just got that book.
Yeah, it's so good. But really what he was talking about was like how a lot of us interfere in other people's lives. And, you know, he was saying like, is it possible to have respect enough for people to allow them to make their own decisions and to also manage the consequences of whatever those decisions are, like, you know, and not interfering. And I think, you know, he wasn't talking about suicide so much as just, you know, allowing people to have their own experiences and their own journeys. And we're all here to learn different things and stuff like that. And Absolutely. I think the human nature, first of all, actually, when I was working on my dissertation, I was writing on shame. And so I did a lot of research on shame and studying it. And there's only one book out there about shame in therapy. And it's like brand new. And I was like, holy shit. Because shame is like I think it's one of the underlying causes of a lot of things. And there's only one freaking book out there. And it wasn't even about.
I should collab on that.
Yeah. And it wasn't even about, because my research was on therapist shame. I wanted to see how therapist shame gets in the way of somebody else's therapy. And what I discovered is like, well, therapists don't have shame, right? But really what we do is like, as soon as somebody starts getting there, we're so uncomfortable with that we steer the conversation in a completely different direction. And it never gets addressed. And so people continue to have mental health problems. They continue to relapse. And it's like, we got to be able to go right there with a person. But most of us as human beings, just in general, will do everything we can to try to avoid your uncomfortableness over there, because you're making me uncomfortable with your uncomfortableness. I don't want to feel that right now. So yeah. We're gonna there you to death, essentially.
Do you find it easier now? Like for me, if I'm talking to one of my clients and they're like, well, I'm unhappy. I'm like, okay, great. What are you unhappy about? Mm-hmm. Like, right? Like there's no, you know, I'll sit there and go, well, you know, that's terrible. Absolutely. It's terrible. Feel the fucking pain. Like feel the effing pain. Like you're allowed to be pissed off. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be depressed. Let's talk it out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like I don't shy away from any of it. Right. And I think that comes with experience, because I've been shamed, you know, being a prostitute and a drug addict. You can talk about that stuff and you start to, that little ball of shame starts to build up when you start talking about it. And then you're like, screw this, like, who cares? Right. And my husband, and I think it comes along with being embarrassed as well, not just shamed, but embarrassed. Yeah. I tell this story all the time. I don't get embarrassed very often anymore. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, I was in a store and there was tons of people in the store. It was downtown, or like in Winnipeg. So you can just imagine huge city, huge store. Yeah. And I had gas and I farted and Tom was standing there and he's like, Keith, if you smell shit, it was my wife. And like literally the entire store heard him, right? And there's like 50 people in this store at least. And I hear everybody laughing and I'm like red, like Rudolph red. I am like absolutely embarrassed. And I'm just like, I don't care anymore. Mm-hmm. Like he kind of worked that out of me where I'm like, whatever, I don't get embarrassed. So when other people are feeling shamed, I feel their pain because I'm an empath. I feel their pain, but it's easier to work through it, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially if you can help them find the cause.
Yeah, it's so hard to go into. And so I try to like work with people to understand like the evolutionary reason, like why do we have this in the first place? And to talk to them about like 99.99999% of the time, your shame doesn't actually fit the facts. And so what can we do about that? You know, shame only fits the facts when you know without a doubt that you will be rejected from your clique or your tribe or your family or whatever it is that is important to you, should you disclose a particular characteristic about yourself, you know? And so for most of us, that's not true. That's not going to happen. And so we create a lot of that stuff in our own minds. We just think we're going to be rejected. But so I work a lot with cognitive stuff on that.
Yeah. Would you classify that along the lines of as somebody who sexual orientation, somebody who is coming out in their sexual orientation will project the shame and not come out, and then that causes a lot of their emotional, right, like their depression and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it could, you know, and that would be an instance in which shame would fit the facts. Like if you were raised in a family where they're like, if we find out any of you are, you know, gay or lesbian, we're going to kick you out of the family. And so shame actually acts as a way, like it keeps us quiet when our survival is at risk. And in some cases it is. But, you know, in a lot of cases it's not, because you can go find other people. It's not your blood family, but you can go find, you know, family by choice. So I think, you know, a lot of shame is self-perpetuated, and it's not based on evidence about what's going on in your community or your, you know, your social circle, your network. And so I think it's just a hugely misunderstood and self-perpetuated emotion that just doesn't serve us very well in today's world. It just doesn't.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. I think that too many people are hiding their emotions, hiding their feelings, their stresses, their, you know, unhappiness because of their fear, right? And that's definitely something I'd like to work with you on futuristically wise, if you're interested. I won't get all like bandwagon messaging you, let's work on this, but the offer's out there, right? Because I didn't read any books on shaming, right? And I thought about the emotional shaming and the situational shaming, right? And just how serious those are for people. I do it all the time. I'm not going to lie. I totally shame people all the time, and I don't even realize it. Like, let's talk my 9-year-old daughter who is obsessed with her tablet. I tell her, oh, Bella, your tablet's gone for the night. Devastation. Like, she's bawling. It's the end of the world. She's crying, and I'm like, get over it. It's just a tablet, right? I'm shaming her, right? I'm emotionally shaming her because I don't see that as an issue.
Right.
Right. And I think we grow up and we're taught to do that, right? My situation is as bad as yours. So what the frick is your problem, right? Like, just so many different aspects to shaming other people as well, not just internalizing it, but as well as, you know, external.
Yeah, for sure.
So since we are half an hour in, why don't we talk about what you've got going on? I'm going to quickly drop what I've got going on after, and then we'll get off of here.
All right. Sounds good. Me go first? Okay.
You go first.
Let's see. So I have my on-ground psychotherapy service or practice. And if you happen to be in the Seattle area and you don't mind waiting on a long wait list, you can get on that. I have about 20 people on my wait list to get in here, mostly because I'm dually credentialed, and I do EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, and I take Medicaid. So I always have a long list. As far as the coaching practice goes, right now I'm just kind of winging it. I would love to work with people, and like, I don't really have a niche. I don't have a specialty. I'm trying to figure that out right now. But what I really love to do is work with people on like behavior change. I do that both in therapy and in the coaching stuff. So I do have a Facebook group. It's completely free. It's called We Grow On. It's all about personal development and growth. I just provide you with the support and the resources. You have to do the work, just like anything else in the world. And right now we're doing a 6-month-long challenge about building basically the foundation for success. So, you know, if you look at a lot of the resources and books on just like how people are successful, it's the little tiny baby things you do every day that add up to huge results. So maybe it's drinking water every day, right? So, but we try to do all the things at once, and we try to implement all the change at once, and we freaking don't do it. So if we can just focus on one thing this month, for me, it's like getting some sort of physical activity this month. For other people, it's like drinking more water or not drinking coffee or meditating or journaling, whatever it is, just one thing at a time. So that's in my Facebook group. That's We Go On, and it's free to join, free to participate.
Tagged in the comments.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. So request to join. I'd love to have you because we do better when we're all working together for a common
Absolutely.
goal. Yeah. And the common goal in this case is having an awesome fucking life. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of that's what I'm doing right now in my life.
Sounds great. I hope everybody, don't forget, you can find Amy's information on my website on melissacrechler.com/Melissa's Monday Madness because she is a guest. We are also going to I posted a link to the group in the Facebook video comments if you want to get in touch with that. I will also post it on YouTube if you're catching the replay on YouTube. For everybody who's watching, I wanted to let you know what I have going on. I just launched a new program, a group coaching program called How to Create and Nurture Healthy Relationships in each of your 7 mindset pillars. If you don't know what that is, Google it. You will find me because I came up with it. That's mine. All mine. Woohoo! Mine, mine, mine. I feel like that bird. You know that bird from Finding Nemo? Mine, 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 mine. So that is all mine. Find them, the 7 mindset pillars. Today we talked about self-care. And self-care is huge. It's not just getting your hair and nails done. It's not just going golfing. It is whatever you need at that moment. Mm-hmm. So whether that's to read a book, relax because you screwed up your neck, whatever it may be, that is self-care for you on that day. Mm-hmm. So lots of love, everybody. If you're interested in the program, send me a message. We have a pre-sale going on where you can get $250 off the program, which is half price on the regular group program. And just about almost a third off of the VIP. Nice. So very nice. $250 and $500. Those are the prices right now until the 13th. And it will be starting the 1st of August. So super excited. Thank you, Amy, for joining me. I've been very excitedly, patiently waiting for this video because I knew we would have some controversial topics. Sure. If you enjoyed watching the video, please share. Take your friends, share it. If you want to ask Amy or I any questions, even on the replay, make sure that you comment on the video and let us know, and one of us will be sure to respond. So much love, guys. I hope you have an awesome week, and go check We Grow On and get in on that challenge because, yes, habits are a good thing to create as long as they're healthy for you.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.